Hello and welcome back to Fuel for Thought, our talk about everything energy related and beyond. Scott Squire is pleased to be joined, as always, by the insider Dan McTagg. And Dan, this is our first show post-election. We'll get to what happened at the polls in a couple minutes, but first things first. I know in this region, Atlantic Canada, last week, prices went up about 5 cents. Gas and diesel now right around 140-ish range. What's happening in the region with prices coming up, and kind of what are you seeing across the country, Dan?
Well, first of all, Atlantic Canada will see a decrease, maybe of a penny or so. That's pretty much all provinces. So they each have their own little formula, so it tends to vary a bit. But diesel will be down a penny, and gasoline will be down a penny as well. But for the rest of the country that isn't regulated, well, they're going to be down 4 or 5 cents by this time next week because they follow the markets, unlike the regulated markets where people have this sort of sense that they have to have this little comfy pillow that lets the government regulate and think for them and do for them. So if you're in like Canada, you're getting stiffed this week because you should be getting a 4 or 5 cent decrease, but you're only getting a 1 cent decrease. So keep pushing those regulatory ideals, and you'll continue to find out why it's not such a brilliant idea when it comes to your bottom line.
And just quickly, what are you seeing on world market with oil prices, Dan?
Oil is collapsing. There's a global recession that's coming, but that'll be made even worse here in Canada. As oil prices drop, so does our value of our loonie, value of our resources, and that could mean more pink slips from coast to coast. What we're looking at is oil falling, well below the $60 range, and that could mean we see much lower prices, but it's gasoline that's going to be really important, and where that goes in terms of demand in the United States really depends on, the extent to which the market is reeling over Donald Trump's ridiculous ideas to try to destroy the global economy. And I hope it helps all the hillbillies in certain parts of the United States who think this is a great thing, but it's frankly not a good thing. And it's going to hurt a lot of people, especially the base that supported them. And I note Trump's numbers are at an abysmal low. And well, that's how he plays, and that's how he rolls. He also, of course, was very instrumental in his great advice on tariffs to also support Mark Carney. So Canada, you play the game. Now you're going to pay for it.
You mentioned Mark Carney. Just a couple of days ago, he and the Liberal Party were put back in place for a fourth term. Dan, just from your point of view, how do you feel it came to this?
Well, obviously, I'm not happy about it, but I don't really care in the sense that I've told people affordability is the issue. They've ignored it. Well, now they can pay for it because they're going to pay for it. Elbows up actually meant pants down. It also meant wallets out because that's exactly what's going to be. They're going to pick your pocket. And if you think this is the old Liberal Party, Justin Trudeau and Pierre Trudeau and Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin, you're I had a great deal in the last year's snow. Obviously, the decision has been made, but it was a Pyrrhic victory for the Liberals. They didn't get the majority, and that means we could be back at this in 2 years. Nevertheless, it's the quality and the caliber of the voter that I have to be concerned about. A very selfish, very greedy electorate that fell again for the second time for the fear mongering, which the Liberals are very good at producing. Give them full credit. They did this full fear mongering nonsense with COVID, and people bought into it. And they did it again this time about orange haired man bad south of the border. Of course, they now realize this morning Donald Trump's very nice to Mark Carney. Didn't like the conservatives. Said he said that, and didn't want to help the conservatives. So all that nonsense about conservatives being Trump, you got it wrong. But then again, that's what happens when you follow along this idea that your elbows up is somehow going to prevent what's going to happen to you, and you're going to get bulldozed. You're going to get hit pretty hard, and for a good number of people, not all, but for a good number of people, 40% of Canadians out there who voted for this stuff, you're going to be facing some very difficult times in the future, and you have no one to blame but yourself. You made your bed, now please lie in it.
Dan, between the Conservatives, NDP bloc, and other parties, approximately 56% of Canadian voters did not vote for the Liberal Party. What's your message to them?
Well, there'll have to be another, 10% join that number in order the way our democratic system works, our parliamentary system works. That's the way the cookie crumbles. And I think there's been a high level of organization. I can't say it's outside influence, but employing, some very strong tactics. When you have a leader of the opposition who has 91 people on the ballot, you got to say there's some room for abuse there, as well as, of course, the fact that nearly 100% of people in that particular riding voted. That seems to be extraordinarily inconsistent. But I would say that for the large number of people, you didn't do a good job. Were you timid when the guy next door took a lawn sign who happens to be a government worker, or perhaps on Pogie? I mean, the reality is that many of us voted, or many people voted in that direction because they have something, they already own something or have something, and want to continue that from happening. Now, what happens, I think, in this kind of circumstance is that after the checks are cashed and they still have to wait for another year before they get another one, they'll start to get a little testy with the Liberals. So that's why I think it'll be probably more about a year or so before things plane out. The election will be behind us, and by then, crushing poverty that's on its way for a lot of Canadians, especially those who voted Liberal, won't be unnoticed. And I think you'll find more people in the ranks of those who said, I'm not going to fall for this nonsense. I did it before. I'm not going to do it again. I suspect that people are going to get really wise as many of them are forced to live in circumstances that they thought could never happen, especially when you have our bond rating agency saying Canada is now on teetering on the brink of having a downgrade in its credit. We have a government that wants to, a new Carney government that wants to spend another $250 billion to add to that debt. We have provinces like mine in Ontario that are faltering. EV mandates that were only put in place to ensure that we could make point purpose of the billions of dollars we're putting towards electric vehicles that nobody wants, nobody can afford, which the government no longer has money to subsidize. So it's going to be a day of reckoning. What we saw 3 months ago, before everybody got enamored and got trendy with Mark Carney, what we're going to see is we're back to where we were back in February. Yeah, you've got a problem. You have a crisis in this country, and it's an affordability crisis. It ain't going away. You put it aside for a while, it's coming right back. The piper wants to be paid.
You never know what's going to happen, but Dan, you have a ton of political experience. Obviously, we've talked about it before. A life spent in the political arena, 18 years as a Liberal member of Parliament. From your perspective, for the betterment of Canadians, what would you like to see from Prime Minister Carney and this Liberal government going forward?
A repudiation of net zero. Getting rid of electric vehicle mandates, getting rid of emission caps, getting rid of carbon taxes, because they're coming back, Mark. And it's all this, Scott. Mark Carney's interest here is to ensure that you were deceived long enough with a head fake of a temporary relief on the carbon tax, only to bring it right back. I'd like to see this remove the now impossible mandate that says, so if you have a propane stove or a gas stove, they're being banned. We're going to go to California type electricity and stuff. That might be great for some people, but I can't. I don't want to go to a restaurant that's cooking on a hot plate. I want to go to a restaurant that cooks on gas or propane, or the case may be. And I certainly don't want to go wind up as they do in some parts of the world where they're using coal or wood or dung in order to make food. And that's the kind of regressive, backward step that we're going to see. Now, those are three areas. There are many others. There's, of course, with the government's proposal on blocking pipelines while imposing onerous emission caps. I think it's going to be pretty clear that we're not just heading for what the Liberals hope would be, people's acceptance of their climate agenda. It's now likely to blow the nation to pieces. And I say that because I think the West has had enough of this stupidity. That doesn't mean that they're going to separate it. What it does mean is that there's going to be a pushback, especially with Alberta, Saskatchewan, maybe pulling out of the CPP, QPP pension plan. And that'll leave a gaping hole if they produce their own. At the same time, I think we're going to see tensions mount to an extent that it will be likely that those 2 or 3 provinces will decide to put together a coalition of the like-minded and let the rest of the country sort of figure out how the heck they're going to be able to manage when 7 of 10 provinces or half provinces, they take, including mine, Ontario, they take money from the federal tax system because they're not producing enough in their own backyard. So I think we're looking at the Liberals are going to have to reconcile. Either they get rid of net zero, stop the foolishness and the recklessness in spending. But it looks like Mark Carney will be then breaking a promise, because he promised to give mooches, parasites, and grifters in this country an extra $250 million, $250 billion, I should say. I don't know how he's going to do it, but it would require a little bit of running a 100-yard dash, 100-meter race while holding your breath.
Dan, we'll wrap up with you in a sec, but you referenced Alberta specifically. What do you make of Premier Danielle Smith coming out post-election with some pretty strong words for Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberals? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think Alberta's had enough. I think producing provinces have had enough. They're the bread and butter of this country. They're actually winning. They're not asking the federal government for money or subsidies like the auto industry is to build stupid electric vehicles, which are turning around only hurting Western Canadian farmers, especially canola producers, because our slapping of tariffs on Chinese imports, which are better built, have greater technology, and are cheaper, and will obviously destroy the billions of dollars the federal, provincial, liberals, and conservatives have invested. I say conservatives because they're not really conservatives here in Ontario. They're actually liberals. Have invested in EVs that no one wants, and they're faltering. They're failing. Companies are walking away from them. You know, I talked about the Bright Drop van plant in Ingersoll a couple of weeks ago that I picked up on the 18th of March, and a few weeks later they went and shut the doors there. What this really means is that it isn't just energy. It's that I think Alberta said, we want to be a serious partner in this, but we can't be if you guys find cute, trendy ways to keep blocking your pipelines and to make decisions that favor one region of the country while subsidizing that region of the country at our collective expense. It's a real joke. Think about it. You are investing billions of dollars to build electric vehicles that are too expensive. That's public money, that's tax money, a lot of it coming from Alberta, whether we like it or not, because that's where a lot of revenue is being generated in this country. And then you're saying, too bad about China because now they're going to tariff canola, your number one crop. How do you survive? I think Alberta is probably looking for the Great Reset in terms of the Confederation. If we don't listen to them, I don't think it's a question of separation. I'm not really worried about that. I'm more concerned about alienation that takes the form of many other things where the province packs up and decides to be less of an inclusive partner in the rest of this country. I mean, look, they've taken in a lot of people from Ontario, from the Atlantic Canada. They're probably one of the best provinces in terms of not just output, but also looking after Canadians and Canadians who can't find jobs in their own provinces are finding jobs over there. So why would we basically spoil our own kennel? And that's exactly what Canada's done under the Liberals, and they voted for it, especially in Eastern Canada. I got to tell you, it hasn't gone unnoticed. That's why I think in 24 hours they got the 177,000 signatures they needed to start the ball rolling on a tougher stance with the rest of Canada. They have no choice. Their backs are against the wall, thanks to Liberal voters who didn't think anything of the fact that they receive their welfare, they receive their pension checks, they receive their government pension checks because of Alberta's, to a large extent, Alberta and the prosperity of the oil and gas sector, which these people voted to try to kill.
Dan, you were an MP. You had to deal with the entire country. What do you make of the seeming difference between ideology and process in the East, Atlantic Canada, Quebec, Ontario, and then, from Manitoba to British Columbia? What was it like when you were an MP, and what do you make of that seeming divide that exists?
I'm old enough to remember 1980, the National Energy Program and the development of the Western Canada concept, and it's one seat that it took, or two, in Alberta in 1982. And that was, I think, the first expression of dissatisfaction with the rest of the country. And I mean, Alberta is very generous, but how many cheeks do they have to slap? And for people to go around at elbows up, were you thinking about who the hell pays your wage? Who the hell provides you the prosperity, the standard of living that you enjoy? It's our resources and our inability to manage them, or our willingness to vote for a Mark Carney and his net zero gang that want to shut this down. Well, that's just downright vandalism. That's not thinking about what you did. And as a result, I think what's going to happen is that we're going to see strong talk leading possibly to action. And it's going to be very unpleasant action for a lot of Canadians when Alberta decides that maybe isn't such a great thing working as cooperatively, and maybe it's time for a new arrangement within the Federation. If you think Quebec separation was something, wait till you see the negotiations that come up in terms of what Alberta's options are, because I think there are many. And I'm not pro Alberta. I mean, I live in Ontario. I've lived here all my life. I've fought the oil companies, but this is about fairness. And when you think Atlantic Canada has more seats than Alberta, even though Alberta has double the population of Atlantic Canada, it starts to make you ask the question about what's in it for me. And if they took the selfish approach that many Liberal voters took in the last election, you can see why Alberta is within its rights to pack up and make it very clear that they don't want to be part of this game anymore. And that is to say, they don't want to be part of the arrangement that puts them at odds every single time. So I don't blame them. But again, Scott, it comes down to it. Canadians, wittingly or unwittingly voted for this. You want this to happen. You want to hurt Alberta. So be it. But just don't expect that, you're going to continue to have those nice, fat government paid pension checks or the kind of grift that you've been receiving because the country's broke and it needs more Alberta, not less.
Dan, we had lots to talk about in the weeks and months leading up to the election, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have lots to talk about in the weeks and months after the election. Appreciate your time as always. Give my best to all your family, your wife, your kids, your mom, of course.
Yes.
Be well. Have a great weekend. And Dan, be interesting to see what we're going to talk about next week. But thanks for your time.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for my family. Okay. Take care, Scott.
You as well. Bye.